Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency.
Welcome to the AI for Services podcast series. My name is Astrid Ayel. I work at Innovate UK Business Connect and I run the AI for Services network. AI for Services brings together 1,500 members interested and involved in transforming the UK professional and financial services sector with the development and adoption of digital technologies. In this series, I interview some of the organizations funded by Innovate UK and the Economic and Social Research Council. This includes startups, universities, and firms. We hear their stories on how they built their projects from scratch, their ambitions for the future, and we discuss wider challenges and opportunities for innovation. Sign up to AI for Services to stay up to date with all the relevant content for the next generation of professional and financial services. So in this episode, we welcome Gemma Felsted, Operation Director at Collaborative Conveyancing, and Johnny Palmer, Data Science Lead at Collaborative Conveyancing as well, and Rob Firth, Senior AI Research Scientist at the Hartree Centre. So Gemma, let us know how Collaborative Conveyancing started.
Sure. So the two co-founders, Chris Harris and Karen Babington, have operated and run businesses previously in the conveyancing sector, but this business was new to them, founded in 2021, was born out of a problem really with conveyancing inquiries, which I think is going to take up the basis for this podcast, but to give some background, so a new business, 2021. Great.
And so So how do you help? How does the solution help the conveyancing sector? And I'm sure that some listeners have gone through buying a house. How does the process of buying a house work? And how does your solution help that process?
Sure. So if you have bought a house, you probably know how lengthy and possibly stressful the process is. And we come in at part of that process. If you're buying a house, you're going to employ a solicitor, a conveyancer, to bring down the risk, really, to make sure that the house that you're buying is, you know what you're buying, and there's no things that are going to surprise you once you've signed on the dotted line. So they are there to do lots of things, but one of the things they do is raise inquiries to the other solicitor, the other side, to say, what are all the things about this house that we may need to know before our buyer buys it? And these inquiries are raised in lots of different ways. Mostly, I say lots of different ways. It's very subjective, depending on how the conveyancer views the property, depending on what risk they think there may be. They look at lots of documentation, they look at title plans, they look at lots of things to work out what questions can we ask to minimise the risk for our client before they buy the house. And this inquiries part of the process is very, very lengthy. I think it's increased immeasurably probably since 2007, and now takes up to something like 21 weeks. So it can take a very long time, a long part of the process, and it's very difficult to track and to measure. And it's very stressful for conveyancers and those people that are buying houses as well, because it's just impossible almost to tell how long it's going to take and what sort of questions are going to be asked and how they're going to be answered.
And does this process usually work by email?
Yes. So one of the challenges we have is, and probably why there hasn't been a solution for this in the past, is these questions are raised via email. Originally, way back, they were probably raised on letter and sent to each other in the post. But now with the email, it's probably made it worse in a way, because you can just keep asking questions, but they go back and forth on email. The main part being that they are unstructured. So if I'm a conveyancer, I can ask questions in any way that I like. I can word them in different ways. Johnny will go on to some of this detail later, but I could number them in different ways. I could use numbering, I could use letters, I could use tables, I could use a PDF or an Excel document. Everybody is different. There are thousands of law firms in the UK and hundreds and thousands of these inquiries being asked every day, week, month, and they're all very different.
So how does collaborative conveyancing help that process specifically?
So Chris and Karen came up with the idea to say, could we somehow structure unstructured data? Now that's really tricky, and this is where Hartree came in to help us, and we'll introduce Rob later. But if we could do something with this unstructured data to try and recognize it, extract it out of these emails, work out what was being said, even just letting the conveyancers know that these are the inquiries that are being raised, and finding a way of tracking them would potentially make this process a lot quicker, more transparent to those who are involved, and potentially bring down these transaction times that we're only seeing increasing.
And do you think that those problems are sort of niche problems, or are they kind of widespread to all conveyancers and all law firms?
Relatively widespread. We also saw in the sector over many years some experienced conveyancers leaving the sector. It's well recognised that it is very stressful, as I said earlier, being a conveyancer, and some people who have been in it a long time, either who are really experienced or can train less experienced conveyancers, are leaving the profession, and that leaves a big hole in the market, and means that the less experienced you are, the potential is that you may ask more questions because you're concerned about the risk, and you want to ask as much as you can to make sure that you are de-risking this property for your client. And therefore the number of inquiries goes up. Sometimes those that definitely do need to be asked, but sometimes those that may not be asked by different types of conveyancers. So we see these questions going up.
Are we seeing the industry changing? I mean, your solution is part of the change, but are you seeing other changes happening?
In relation to inquiries, we're not seeing the number of inquiries going down. We're only seeing them increasing. And unfortunately, there hasn't been, although there's been lots of improvements in other parts of the transaction, there's lots of things that make it easier to check ID, to do the end part of the transaction. This part in the middle remains really, really difficult because it's unstructured and almost unpredictable in a way. So we haven't seen a lot of change there in all of the time we've had collaborative, and obviously before that as well. So probably not a lot of change. We'll come on to later. I think we're going to talk about if we see any change in the industry in the way they may want to adopt technology. That has definitely been a change. But in this inquiries part, in the way they work, not much change in the last few years at all.
I guess also what's tricky is that every property is different. So some questions will be similar, but some questions might be quite specific.
Definitely. When Johnny gets into the detail, we always ask, actually, Johnny and the data science team, can you give us an amount of topics? At least can we break these down to topics so we can try? And there's thousands. There's absolutely thousands. We do see some similar questions and types of things, but some could be very different. You could be selling a house that has a moat built around it, and there'll be a question about that. There could be a house that has been near some sort of historic thing that's been built, and there'll be a question around that. That's very different from property to property. And of course, there's freehold and leasehold, and lots of different questions around those as well.
Great. So, Rob, do you want to tell us a little bit about the Hartree Centre and how it has become involved in this project?
Yeah, so the Hartree Centre is a challenge-led research technology organisation based in Daresbury Lab, Cheshire. So we are around 200 people spread across a number of specialisms, from data science, high-performance computing, software engineering, and artificial intelligence, who really exist to use that expertise to solve industrial problems, to get the technologies of today and tomorrow into the hands of people who have real industrial challenges like those that we see for collaborative conveyancing. And what that means is we're really dependent on the domain expertise of people like Gemma and Johnny and the conveyancing team, Chris and Karen, to say, here is a problem. We think that some AI technologies can kind of address it, but we're not AI specialists ourselves. And as the Hartree Centre, what we do is we say, right, well, we have people who know these technologies, but not the area. Let's drop them in, form a combined team, and work on this problem together and produce a solution that works.
Have you been involved in this particular project? What's your role?
So with this particular project, we were engaged in a small proof of concept project by Collaborative Conveyancing as part of some regional development funding. It was originally a 3-month engagement just to demonstrate that kind of the signal was present in the emails in order to build an AI system to extract the information in a way that would be useful and actionable for the conveyancers. And that was enough to demonstrate to this Innovate fund that there was really a golden opportunity to apply some of these more sophisticated technologies to really extract it, manipulate it, and pass it on to a subsequent part of the pipeline. So I came in as the technical lead from the Hartree side, and over the course of the engagement, we shaped the challenge into one that could be addressed by the natural language processing type approach. I think the timeline is fairly important here. So at the time we were pulling this project together, it was mid 2020, which for those of you who can remember is when the kind of large language model paradigm, the likes of ChatGPT, was very much still in its infancy. And we were able to kind of construct the problem in a way that was a little less of a black box, and was able to provide some degree of assurance to the specialists that you can monitor the process of classification, for example, or automated annotation through the application of a slightly smaller model. This was all expertise that we built up over a number of years and a number of successful projects through a range of industries, and was something that was kind of completely new to the team at Collaborative Conveyancing.
So Gemma said, we trying to structure unstructured data. What techniques, what process practices do you use to do that?
Yeah, so initially the challenge is actually superficially quite simple and practically quite complex, which is not unique to this one project or even this area. So even distinguishing in an email between the content of the email and the footers of the email is actually surprisingly hard to do at scale without dropping a fraction that you're not sure about, because lawyers like to write quite a lot of disclaimers at the bottom of their emails, so you need to be able to chop that off to get to the actual content of the email. So we had to build a machine learning classifier that would identify the content of the email, because off-the-shelf solutions weren't sufficient. Once we had the content of the email, we had to divide that into what you might think of as sentences, but really we have to think of as kind of semantically consistent units. So just things that have a meaning that you move on to the next one and it's discussing something else. Now, the semi-structured nature of the email means that sometimes that is a sentence as you'd recognize it as a speaker of a natural language. It might also be quite informal. It might be a bullet point. It might be a numbered list that doesn't actually have a full stop on it. So it's not as easy as saying, find me where the full stops are, and that's the sentence that I'm going to consider. And of course, some of these inquiries might be on multiple lines. So you have to use some advanced kind of sentence segmentation or paragraph identification algorithms. And then the first real, I think, AI component was that of a classifier. And that was to classify whether the content that we were showing the model contained an inquiry or not. So it was a very simple, boil it down into a binary choice. Is it interesting or is it useful? Do we need to do anything with it or not? So for example, if you write, dear sir or madam, we don't need to classify that as an inquiry. If it is, please provide some information about the extension, then that is an inquiry. So we need to make sure we're always pulling those out. And we had to discuss in some detail with the collaborative conveyancing experts about what it actually meant to have a thing that needed to be classified as positive. And we got them to generate a training data set for us where they annotated a load of examples of this is interesting, this is not, providing the right data mix of positive, negative examples. And then we trained a machine learning model that was based on a larger language model to do this task for us. So that was really the first place where it came in. And as the project continued, we started to refine that and take the outputs from those classification models and attach topics to them, to tag them with particular areas. It might be, like I say, extensions. It might be drainage. It might be, issues with neighbours. And those classifications help the conveyancer through the process. And right towards the end, we started to interact with the kind of store of knowledge that conveyancers have as a kind of handbook. So actions that you could take based on the information contained in that. So Johnny led on that piece of work, and I think carried it on. So I'm sure he'll be able to talk about it a little bit further.
Yeah, it would be great to sort of understand, Johnny, how you obviously work close to Rob, and how does that relationship work or involved?
So I think the project was going for a good 12 to 18 months before I even joined Collaborative Conveyancing. So I think they were well on the way to building what Rob has just kind of talked you through. So I came in at a point where we were able to, relatively well extract individual emails from the process, from within, extract individual inquiries from within emails, sorry. The process of actually how we worked with Hartree was pretty slick from the off in terms of everything that they put together was very well sort of documented and laid out. It gave us a good leg up in terms of we had a really good grounding, a good core product to be able to then build on what Rob's just mentioned in terms of even once we have individual inquiries that we have then classified correctly and we've said, yes, there is something that we're interested in here. We then needed to be able to build on that to then say, okay, even if we've split it into an individual inquiry, which might be only a single sentence, you can obviously still ask for 2, 3, 4 separate pieces of information from within that one sentence. So we then needed to go down another layer as such to then obviously be able to extract from within those single sentences. We should be able to extract individual tasks that the conveyancer might be asked to do. It ended up being, I think, it kind of grew arms and legs in that respect. And I think the project started off as can we extract the inquiries and structure this unstructured data, but the more you look into it, the more kind of complex the solution needed to be to be able to really help the user and help the conveyancer through the process. Rob and the Hartree team were always there as a really good resource of all things data science knowledge to be able to say, okay, how are we going to go about this? Rob and the team would always have, good suggestions and a really good grounding of that base knowledge that would then, we could then layer on top our domain knowledge as such. So it was a really good, a good fit in terms of a domain and the more academic side of the relationship.
And what data did you use to build those models?
The main aspect that Rob was talking about was probably the bulk of our training data in terms of the data that our conveyancers had tagged up and labelled. From our perspective, that later stage of being able to extract individual tasks from within even 1 or 2 sentences and split them out into individual points that the conveyancer may then need to deal with. This kind of brings us on to the idea of our sort of knowledge store or knowledge bank, in that our AI solution, we tried using a large language model to answer some of the questions originally. But as you can probably imagine, it sounds like an AI model rather than an actual conveyancer. Because as you can imagine, the lawyers have a very particular way that they kind of talk to each other. They use very specific language. And, we don't inherently understand what position each conveyancer will be in at the time that they receive a particular inquiry. So we realized quite quickly that using just a big load of training data to say, go and learn how to talk like a conveyancer wasn't really gonna fit the bill here. So we essentially spoke to our conveyancers in-house and said, I think we could do with gathering a lot of information on how you would deal with each one of these inquiries, and the skill and how we actually turn this into a product would be correctly identifying when we are talking about each of these topics, and then having the control on our side to be able to show that to the user and say, okay, here's some information that we think might be relevant to what you're being asked to do, and then call on that at the right time, essentially, rather than having, like Rob was saying, we're trying to avoid that black box element of AI where you have no control over what's been said to the user, because the user might then flag it and say, this is quite a strange response, this isn't really helpful to me. And if we can't then go in and update that information and change it or give a reason as to why that's happened and that's been returned, then you can imagine that you'd lose confidence in the product quite quickly. So retaining that control via the use of sort of a structured knowledge store was really, really important to us as well.
And were there any other issues in terms of trust? And have you found that that potential stakeholders or the interested clients are a bit nervous about what you're building?
I think everyone's a little bit skeptical of, whenever you hear the term AI come up in any sort of conversation, especially obviously a professional setting. I think people are inherently still a little bit skeptical, and they're going to ask a lot of questions surrounding, what's happening to the data, where's all of this coming from? Is any of the information used for training data and training other models, etc.? Like, where's it all being stored? Where's it going, etc., etc.? So, it's really important for us to be, transparent and upfront with any potential users as to what happens to the data. So, all of our data is stored within Azure. Rob and the Hartree guys all set up that existing infrastructure. So when I joined, everything was already stored in Azure, and obviously all the security overlaid over the top. And we've kept everything in-house within Azure also. So we use some large language models now that we've kind of taken on usage of since the project ended, which are all stored completely separate from any other company. So we use an OpenAI model that's hosted completely within the Azure infrastructure. So it doesn't touch OpenAI in any way, because I think if you use OpenAI within the kind of the stock ChatGPT implementation, all of that information is sent to the USA. So we made sure that the region is completely closed off, so that you can only the information is stored completely within the UK, essentially. So we made sure to only use models that adhere to that regency specific structure. We're very clear with people who interact with us. That's how the information is stored. That's how it's processed. And once you kind of explain that, and once people understand that you understand where it is, and you can point them to the relevant pages, and we can explain what happens to all this information, then people tend to be a lot more open to it, and they suddenly realize that they can what's going on, they can trust what you're saying, and they can trust where the information's going, and then people tend to relax a bit more, and then they're more interested in what's actually happening, and start to look at the product a bit more rather than the data side of it.
And Rob, I was just wondering, because I'm guessing that you work across many sectors within the Hartree Centre, and for you, what were the main learnings with this project, and working in the legal sector? Did you see anything particular compared to other projects that you're working on?
Yeah, so you're right. We do work across pretty much all sectors. I'm a sort of specialist in unstructured data, so I do a lot of work in document-rich areas, so things like legal and professional services, regulatory areas, but also academic literature and things like that. So it is always true that the real value is in the experts, and I think that's really quite apparent when you're working in the legal domain, because they will tell you to sort of a 7.5 minute slot how much their time is worth, right? So you have to be really, really careful about how you're using your expert time. So that's perhaps not something new, but something I was really reminded of. It's always worth bearing in mind with something as significant as a property transaction that you don't want to get this wrong. It's perhaps not life and death, but it is a significantly stressful thing in people's lives. So you want to make sure that goes well. You have to give it quite a good deal of consideration, and remember that there are individuals at the end of it. And I think that's kind of it can seem like we've said that legal speak is a little bit inscrutable. It's very dry sometimes. Ultimately, these are people, and we're trying to make their lives a little bit easier. And I think that's something that it can be worth reminding yourselves in areas like this.
Gemma, so the project is finished. What stage are you in terms of your business? So have you got a product? If I know you are going to be one of our exhibitors at Legal Geek, so are you engaging with law firms, conveyancers? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So yeah, so when this particular project ended, it probably took us another maybe 3 months in total to get to a stage where we were ready to launch the product in the market in kind of a trial version. 1 month, I think it was February or March, we launched this year. We did over 100 demos to law firms within that time. Speaking to what Johnny did a minute ago, actually, it was really positively received, which the likelihood of that is that there is definitely a problem. People are looking for a solution to the problem. Doesn't mean that then we don't have lots of other hurdles to overcome. But to go right back to the beginning, if conveyancers don't have something to help them, it likely means that they are possibly cutting and pasting. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but cutting and pasting these inquiries out from emails and putting them in some sort of other document, whether that be Word or a table or something. So they're having to do a lot of manual work. They're very used to it and they're pretty quick at it, to be honest. But they are looking for a solution to help them. Things can get lost as well. So it was well received. So we put the product in with some firms to trial on pilot, and it's still sitting with those firms as it is now. We have some users using it day to day. There's a little bit with lawyers or anyone really. If you're asking someone to change the way they work, and we are, it's difficult because you're used to doing something in a certain way, and there is a change because some technology has taken over for you. But once they get into it, I even had someone said to me the other week they're enjoying using it. That's probably part of Johnny's and the conveyancer's work actually, because it comes back and gives them some suggestions. So there's definitely some tricky parts in sort of the implementation part, but once they get to use it, they're finding actually that it's making their lives that bit easier. And also their communication with third parties. So if you're a conveyancer, you have to update your client on what's happening. You have to update the estate agent with what's happening. And if you have to go through 100 emails to do that, to work out where you are, that's a pain. But one of the things we've built in is we can see all of the back and forth of all of these inquiries, and that makes it a lot easier for them as well. So yes, in these trials, it's been positive. We've got some upcoming projects with larger law firms. They obviously have hundreds of conveyancers and thousands of inquiries. So the way we implement and roll out is slightly different. But yeah, it's going well so it's been 6 months, I'd say now. It's going well, yeah.
And are you able to continue on training the model with those new pilots and what you're working on, or is that the next stage?
So what I would definitely say is we are nowhere near the end of our data science journey. There is lots to do. So we started off and we could, as Rob and Johnny said, we can extract inquiries. We can do that very well now. But as Johnny started to allude to, can we work out what the conveyancer may need to help them to answer these inquiries? That comes back to my beginning point. We're talking about less experienced people in the sector. So Johnny and his team have had a lot of work to do on that part of it. And still to this day, actually, Johnny will attest, because we have live data coming in, we're still refining and training and doing things to make sure we can still extract everything that we need to. Johnny, it's probably worth you talking about some of the things that the challenges that you still have in the data science area, because it's definitely not stopped. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, even when you think about the forms that people are referring to, lawyers will often, as I say earlier, when I was saying about the one inquiry that might contain 3 or 4 different actions, conveyancers will often refer to a specific form and say, can you please provide the documents at 4.1, 8.3, 12.4. And that could be one sentence that then becomes, 3 tasks. But then obviously as new forms come out, as they are updated, once every couple of years or once every 2 or 3 years, whenever it may be, those sections of each form will completely change in what they actually are, requesting in terms of the documents that those specific questions are referring to. So we need to make sure that we're constantly on top of it in terms of updating our knowledge store that I was talking about earlier, to make sure that once those new forms hit, then everything's updated on our side, so that we're not directing people to the completely incorrect documents that they're being asked for. In terms of new legislation that's coming out, things like the Building Safety Act, as a result of all the leasehold changes that have come in over the past few years. That's all still relatively new to a lot of conveyancers. A lot of people don't take on that work, so it's we'd like to be able to keep on top of that and make sure that we're keeping up to date as that changes, so that the information that we're returning is always up to date and correct and what have you. So that's one element of what we need to do to keep on top of it. But then there's also all the data science challenges that come along with that, on top of just making sure that we're up to date in terms of case law and what have you. Being able to deal with multiple documents that are packaged as one document, being able to deal with people who are replying within the chain of an email. There's all sorts of quirks that are initially seem like they might be edge cases that, that's come up, but it might not come up most of the time. Whereas obviously when you're looking over hundreds of thousands of inquiries and hundreds of thousands of emails, then you start to realize that the way people talk to each other over emails is forever going to be weird and wonderful. So being able to handle that on our side is going to continue to be a challenge. So I don't think we'll ever quite be done with it, but we're certainly getting there.
Yeah, it's the beauty that as humans we don't behave like machines. So So Gemma, how has the Innovate UK grant helped you? So from our conversation, I think it was about kickstarting the project and the collaboration with the Hartree Centre. That was obviously key in setting the kind of AI expertise that you needed. Is that right?
Definitely, yes. I mean, I can't say where we would be without the Innovate project, but the fact that we had Innovate and we had the collaboration with Hartree, both of those things were probably crucial for this particular project and therefore now product. We didn't have the in-house data science expertise that we needed we could have got them, but they would have been nowhere up to the level that Hartree were, and we may have gone down a completely different path. And just to have that concentrated effort, I think we extended the project slightly, but it was over a period of 9 months initially, and then possibly we pushed to 12. I can't remember the exact timings. But to have a kind of a start, a middle and an end, and to have these check-ins throughout as well was really helpful, just for any startup really, to be on a path to set out at the beginning what you're planning to do. It obviously doesn't always go quite to plan, but to set it out for a focused amount of time, I think is helpful anyway. And Innovate obviously helped with that, and we had to document that along the way as well.
And looking in the future, so you're now running pilots and engaging with law firms. What's the future looking at? What are your ambitions?
So I'm guessing we need to move from startup to scale up. We are almost no longer a startup anymore. So since the start, I think at the start of the Innovate project, we probably had 5 employees possibly, and now we've got almost 12 employees. So we've almost doubled. Johnny has doubled his data science resource. There are 2 of Johnny. And Johnny has someone working with him. We have 2 conveyancers working for us, a product owner, business analyst, and the developer team we've expanded as well, just because we need that many people to get this off the ground. So yeah, we're looking forward really to continuing to refine the product and get it really good, so that this does help conveyancers without changing much of the way they work. We were never asking them to really change the way they did these inquiries. I think that is an almost impossible struggle, and that's why it hasn't been addressed before. But could they continue to work in the same way they have been and be conveyancers? That's what we want them to do. We never want to take over what they're doing, but help them with this huge admin burden that they have at the moment, and is delaying transactions for movers and homeowners.
And what support do you think the legal sector need in general in order to modernize and adapt and adopt technologies?
So I think we are getting there. That's probably the biggest change. I said at the beginning that we hadn't seen a lot of change in the number of inquiries, and that didn't sound very positive at all. But what we have seen that's been positive, and it's not just us that's doing this, there's lots of companies striving towards the same thing, is that we are starting to see a shift in the change in mindset in law firms, and I expect many other sectors as well, in that they realise to change and to stay ahead and be competitive and, make the lives of their staff, as good as they can be, they are going to have to adopt some technology, and it is there to help them. It's not meant to be there to hinder or to take over their jobs as well. And they're starting to be more curious about how this could help them, I think, and how types of technology could really help. And we're meant to be partnering with them. We're not against them. Like I've said multiple times, we're not there to take their roles. It's to help them. That is our aim. So we're starting to see a shift there, a positive change, I would say, and it's really nice, and we're having some great conversations.
Brilliant. So we ask a final question to all our guests, and it's around any piece of content that you'd like to recommend to our listeners to help them understand the topics that we discussed today. So it could be a book or a report or a video or even another podcast. So is there any useful piece of content that you'd like to share?
So probably on our side, if anyone wanted to know more about conveyancing, and it is useful, genuinely, if you're a home mover or you're interested in this sector, there's an independent media company called Today's Media, and they will publish lots of different articles and books and podcasts. So that's probably your most varied range of things on our side. I'm going to refer to Johnny and to Rob on the data science side, though I know Hartree have got lots of resources available.
Yeah, so I'm going to be cheeky, and I'm going to pick 2 things, one of which is our resources. So we have a lot of case studies available to see the work that we've been able to do across the sectors, from AI through software engineering, high performance computing. They're available on our website. We also have free training as part of our Hartree National Centre for Digital Innovation, and that's from cloud engineering to machine learning, data science. If you're interested in becoming an expert or you're already an expert, we should have something for you. Outside of Hartree, something that I really like is there's a blog by the Ada Lovelace Institute, who are a independent research organization who do a lot of work on kind of AI and society. So I think there's a lot of resources out there for, you know, the fantastic technical achievements that you can get with AI. And I think actually really good sources of how the sort of socio and technical meet and come together is almost more interesting. And that's a really good resource for that. They've got a blog and a newsletter that I'd really highly recommend.
I think I'll come at it from a different perspective and say, you know, in terms of just the layman, maybe the non-data scientist, I would say just make sure you subscribe to even one or two kind of AI or data science related newsletters, because, you know, the pace at which this is all changing, any specific resource that you refer someone to, like say, unless it is a blog or something like that that's constantly updated, it's more than likely going to be, you know, out of date in 6 months' time or so. So I think it's really handy to keep your finger on the pulse, just to have like a daily newsletter, just to see what's new in terms of what the latest, say, language models can do. Even just in terms of if you think of sort of ChatGPT and Claude and what have you. Very recently, you know, you couldn't throw a PDF at these things and be able to talk to it. And, you know, within the last sort of 3 months, you know, that's doable. You didn't used to be able to ask what the weather was on the particular day. Now they can access that as part of, you know, the free models that you have access to without having to even pay a subscription. You know, it can do all of that. And if you weren't aware of those, you know, new features coming out, then you might not be using any of these tools to their full ability. So I would say, yeah, it's always worth keeping your ear to the ground in terms of what's new, just in these general tools, because there's probably a lot of information and a lot of you know, time saving that could be had that people don't even aware that is available to them for no money. Obviously, just with the caveat of be careful what you put into language models. Please don't go putting in anyone's personal data and what have you. So always be wary. But yeah, I would say keep up to date.
Is there any newsletter in particular that you would recommend?
I think mine is just AI Today. Very simple one.
AI. Okay, great. Thanks so much. Thank you everyone for joining our podcast, and till next time.
Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency.